Hello and welcome to Do It Yourself Musician. What you're looking at there is my Roland W-30 music workstation. It's a fantastic keyboard. What this thing is, it's a 12-bit sampler. It's a sound module. It's a sequencer. And it's also a keyboard controller. It's basically those things in a box together in the shape of a keyboard. It's a fantastic thing. One of the coolest pieces of gear Roland ever made. Made in the late 80s, 88, 89, early 90s. Top end piece of gear. It was at least $3,000 retail back in the day. This one I got off Craigslist for, I don't know, $75 I think. It's in pretty rough shape. I spent about a month restoring it, actually. eBay values are probably, I don't know, you see them listed on there all the time, $250, $200 maybe. I think it'd probably still take you a while to sell one for that. It's still kind of a popular keyboard in certain vintage keyboard circles. I certainly love it. I always wanted one, so I put the time in to restore it, and I use this as my main controller keyboard. It works fantastic for me. It does have one thing that's really kind of a bitch about it, though. Actually, there's more than one thing. For a piece of gear that old, it does a few things that aren't too fun, but the biggest thing is that it has this Roland 2-prong IEC cord. It's this ungrounded square 2-prong jobby for the AC power on the thing. And so obviously you need this special cord to run it. And that's kind of a pain in the ass if you ever lose this thing or whatever. So what I'm going to do today is replace it with a regular 3-prong IEC inlet. The IEC inlet on the back of this is a 2-prong thing, which I'll show you next. This should just be a drop-in. This should be a pretty easy little fix to make to this thing, which will allow me to use a regular IEC power cord that are everywhere. So it'll be a plus on this thing to make this mod to it. So let me show you what's in there right now. Alright, we're looking at the back of the keyboard now, and the IEC inlet that's there for the AC, clearly marked AC on it. You can see that it's the 2-prong Roland job. And I'm going to replace it with this one, which is the regular 3-prong IEC. And I was kind of hoping this would be a sort of a drop-in thing, but looking at it right now, I don't know. I might have to open this hole up a bit, but actually it looks like it is a little bigger than this thing is. It might just drop in. We'll see. Hopefully it'll just go in there, but first of all, I've got to take the bottom off of the keyboard, which is a 22 screw affair. So I guess I'll do that right now. I'll get screwing. Okay, I flipped it over and we're looking at the bottom of it right now. And like I said, this is 22 screws hold the bottom plate on. Basically, it's every one of these screws on the bottom except for the feet. You don't have to take the feet off. All these ones on the bottom you've got to take out, and then there's some along the edge, the very edge here, that you got to take out. And it's 22 screws. And as per usual, I'm going to take every one of them out with the screwdriver because someone, I don't know who, unplugged my cordless screw gun again. Here I go. Okay, now I got all the screws out, and I'll show you here. There's two kinds of screws. Basically the fat screws go in the bottom and the skinny screws go down along the back edge. Go ahead and pull the bottom off here. If I got all of the screws out, I hope. Didn't forget any. Yeah. And that's the inside of the Roland W-30. And we're mostly going to be concerned about the power supply down here. Let me give you a close-up of that. Alright, so just so I can orient you here, we're looking in through the bottom of the W-30. This is the power switch here. This is the two-prong AC inlet. And basically what they have going on here is there's a hot wire, the black, and then there's the neutral, which they call cold on here. They come to the switchboard where they're switched, and then two leads fly back off that board to this connector right here on the main power supply board. So first of all, I'm going to cut this tie here first, I think, just so you can kind of see what's going on in there. Yeah, let's do it like this. Yeah, see these two leads here are coming from the IAC connector and going to the switchboard, and then off the switchboard these leads go back to this power connector to the main power supply board. This looks like it's, I don't know, this is 12 or, well, it's maybe not that big, 12, 16 AUG wire or something like that. Basically what I'm going to do though is I'm going to cut the wires here, strip them back, and put a connector on it to connect up to the terminals on the new IEC inlet here. One thing to take note of is obviously this is a two-wire system because this is a double isolated unit. It doesn't need a ground, or perhaps didn't need a ground back then. But the modern three-prong IAC does have a place for a ground, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to run a ground wire off of that back to this screw here, which is on the chassis of the unit, just to install a ground on it, which was probably the proper way to do this. I don't think you necessarily have to do it, but might as well take advantage of that and go ahead and do that while we're at it, just to provide a safety ground for this unit. So first of all, I'm going to clip these out, get this old IEC out of here, and see how good the new one fits in there. They did not, these are soldered on, they're not Molex connectors. I'm going to use Molex connectors though, it's fine for that. They fit really tight on these blades, they'll never come loose inside of here. So clip that back. Now let me unscrew this thing, get it out. Alright, there's the old two-prong. Alright, the thing to know about these IEC inlets is that they do have a way that's, right side up. Though they could go either way, but generally that would be considered up, as it were, with these slanted things towards the upper side. And when you're looking at the connector, the center is the ground. To the left of that will be the hot connection, and to the right of that will be the neutral. So since I've got this W30 laying upside down right now, I'm going to install it like this. And then when we go to wire that, I'll show you closer how the pins go with the wiring. Also, never over tighten these too much. You can crack that really easily. Okay, now that we've got the new IC inlet installed and we're looking down on it upside down, that's going to mean that the hot wire the black goes to the left, the ground green is going to be in the center connector, and the neutral white wire is going to be that connector there. I'm going to go ahead and start by putting the ground wire in first. I'm going to run it over to the screw here with the appropriate kind of attachment there. I'm going to use on the IC connector, I'm going to use these Molex, which I think are 16 to 14 wire gauge, and they do fit that perfectly. So that's what I'm going to use to come off of that, and then I'm going to use just a hold down into the screw here to hold the wire down on the other side. I'm going to connect the Molex to the ground prong back here. Not a lot of room for that, but I think I'll be able to get it to fit. There, I mean, that's a good tight connection there. And I'm going to run it over to this screw here. So let me back that screw out. Alright, there's a good firm ground connection. Alright, now I have to strip the neutral and the hot, get those applied with the Molex connectors too. Oh, good. Let's come get that old shrink wrap off there. That is actually not the kind of wire I was expecting to be in there. That's like tinned pre-tinned copper wire, which that's probably not going to play well with my Molex connector. Might have to wind up soldering that to that thing. Okay, well, after stripping this wire, I realized that the Molex connectors are not going to fit on the wire that's wired into the keyboard already. This is like a pre-tinned kind of copper thing with the insulation over it. I guess in the factory they just wanted to strip it off and solder it, so I'm going to have to solder it onto my connector here. I didn't want to do that because it's hard to solder these IEC connectors without just melting the pins right out of them. It's just a pain in the butt. So, but it looks like I'm going to have to give it a shot. I got some shrink wrap down on these things, keep it away from the heat. and I'll go ahead and wrap them around, and I'll use something to try to heat sink that the best I can before I go to solder it. Okay, so what I've done here is I've put an alligator clip here. I'm going to try to use that as a heat sink to take heat off of the blade contact as I solder it and not melt the IC connector. I'm just going to try to get in there with a really hot iron and get out as quick as I can. So I've got my iron, 40 watt iron, heated up as high as it'll go. I just want to get in and get out with a little solder. It's very difficult to heat that big blade connector up enough to get the solder to actually stick to it. So I wanted to use Molex's, not soldering, because it's just not fun on these. That actually looks like a pretty good solder joint though. And that joint looks pretty, oops, sorry. And that joint looks pretty good. Take that off and have a look here. Yeah. Seems like I might have gotten away with it. Maybe. I do not like soldering IEC connectors, but those look pretty good. Alright, I'll just bring my heat shrink up here. And we'll just get the heat gun out and shrink that. Alright, well, here is the new 3-prong IEC connector installed in the W-30. It replaces the 2-prong, which is hard to find cable. So 3 prongs all nicely installed. I managed not to melt it and ruin it when I soldered it. As you can see, I've got my hot and my neutral soldered in, and I put in a new ground lead because it's now 3-prong, and I grounded that to the chassis with the Molex connector on it. And now I'm going to put the back on, and we'll go see if it actually still works. I'll spare you the putting on of the 22 screws on the back, I'll just start back up and we'll see if it fires up. Alright, I've got the back on it. I've got it set back up here on top of my rack. I've got my new 3-prong IEC cable that I'm going to put in right now. Switch the power on to my rack and switch the power on to the W30 and see what happens here. Yep, there we go. Good as new. Cool. Oh, there she is. Good as new, brand new IEC, 3-prong IEC cable conversion. I did not insert the system disc. Insert the right disc into it. It's a good modification to make to these W30s. You can also, like the old samplers, like the S550, and some of the other things also have that 2-prong cord, and they should all adapt pretty easily. So I hope you found that useful. If you've got one of these old W30s or any old Roland gear or old synth stuff, just keep an eye out on my channel. I do guitar stuff too, home recording, the whole bit, with an eye towards doing it low budget style, but yet getting good professional results. So keep an eye out on my channel, subscribe, comment, ask me questions, whatever, and I'll see you next time.